I know the book says drink the milk, but you should really drink the water. This is going to be like a series because Ronodin is quite a character. So there's too much to cover in one blog post. I feel like it would go on way too long and nobody would like finish it. And so I'm having a whole series about Ronodin. The first one I wanted to cover is he morally gray? Because I've seen a few people like call him morally gray, and I just don't really know. I didn't really feel like he was, and that I didn't really know, and so I did like a deep dive research morally gray characters. So I'll go into that in here, and I will have the sources that I linked in the blog post linked in the description as well. So if you want to check anything out or do your own research, they are there. But this is just what I found, and yeah, let's get into it. Is Ronodin morally gray? Let's get into it. For this portion of my series on Ronodin, I'm going to avoid his backstory because as of right now, without the 5th book, we can only theorize about his backstory. And for my conclusion, I'm only using canon facts, but there will be another part about theories for his backstory, which I will be getting like other people's theories as well as mine, so that will be fun, so you can look out for that. But yeah, there will be a part in the blog post and YouTube series where we theorize about Ronodin's backstory, because there can be many theories, and fair warning, I enjoy Ronodin's character. I think he's interesting, but he's not going to get any special treatment from me because he has the possibility of a tragic backstory. So, morally gray. Disclaimer, morally gray is a broad concept, but there are a few things that characters need in order to be morally gray. I'm just going off the textbook definition of morally gray and many other sources and the most common morally gray defining characteristics. There are many different morally gray characters, but I've picked the one I think most people feel Ronodin is. Or isn't. Feel free to respectfully disagree with me in the comments, but anything mean or negative will be deleted because I don't need that. I will have the sources that I used for research linked in the description and also linked in the blog post. So 2 places you can find them. I would like to say the research that I did into understanding morally gray characters is why this video and blog post took so long, because it literally took like weeks. So be respectful. I put a lot of work into this, and I know Ronodin is a topic people can get heated about. Let's get into the blog post now. I have seen a few people refer to Ronodin as morally gray, and that kind of always just like rubbed me the wrong way because I always thought you had to have morals in order to be morally gray, which I don't see much proof of Ronodin having. So I did some research and I came up with this as the most like morally gray spectrum type of thing. A morally gray character isn't someone who's mean but has a few redeeming qualities so you like them, or makes bad decisions but they're hot so it's fine. It's not. Let go of that, please, everybody. Yeah, that's the bad boy trope, not morally gray. A morally gray character isn't someone who doesn't pick a side or switches sides often. Morally gray characters often have a goal and strict morals that they don't stray from. They often think the ends justify the means and understand what they're doing is bad, but they still feel they have to do it for the greater good. A morally gray character is someone who has good intentions but terrible ways of fulfilling their goals. I read an article from Summit News, which will be linked below and on the blog post. I highly suggest you read that if you want to understand morally gray characters a little bit more than what I'm going to go into here, but here's a quote from the article. A villain is purely evil. They're probably selfish in a way and have no good intentions, whereas morally gray characters understand their flaws. Ronodin doesn't think he has any flaws and always finds a way to justify his actions even if they can't really be justified. Ronodin's actions speak louder than his words in a lot of cases, and his actions show that he really only cares about himself. So there aren't really any good intentions behind his actions to be morally gray. I mean, unless the fate of the world relies on him, and it doesn't, so. When he says he cares about certain groups of people or beings, it is only to manipulate people into thinking what he wants them to. An example of this is in Master of the Phantom Isle. This is from Master of the Phantom Isle, page 176 to 177. It's a quote from Ronodin. I don't like the idea of anyone ruling over anybody else, Ronodin answered. No one should be oppressed. Okay. Logical statement, right? That makes sense, right? Yeah. In the next book, Ronodin becomes the Fairy King, ruling over an entire side of the magical community. Just like a little hypocritical, don't you think? Just a little bit. A little bit. Not to mention the light beings that he's forcing to turn dark. Seems a little bit like oppression to me at least. And I'm not saying dark creatures aren't oppressed in ways. I'm just saying Ronodin is a hypocrite. It shows the good intentions people might point out is purely for show and manipulation. So throughout the series, Ronodin claims he wants freedom for all. Not an exact quote. I mean, it could be. I don't know with him anymore. But throughout the series, we also kind of see that isn't really true at all. Yes, Ronodin did free multiple beings of darkness that you could say were wrongfully imprisoned or inhumanely imprisoned. But in Master of the Phantom Isle, we see him turn the Phantom Desia into a slave. That doesn't really sound like freedom like he claims he wants for dark beings. Not to mention his lame excuse of saying he only has Bracken locked up to protect others from him. If you want freedom, stick with that statement, please. Like, stop being all wishy-washy. That doesn't make you morally gray. That's not what morally gray is. Wishy-washy doesn't equal morally gray. That equals annoying. And hypocritical. Truly, we don't really know anything about his motives or why he does what he does. But his actions always contradict his words. So, as I've said, Ronodin's actions speak more than his words. I already mentioned Desia, so let's talk about the dragons. Ronodin says he wants the dragons to be free, and constantly calls the sanctuaries prisons. The sanctuary topic is a very complex topic that I will cover in a different blog post and different YouTube video. Right now, this is about Ronodin, which just seems like that's how he likes it. So let's keep it on that topic. We know he frequented Titan Valley, which is one of the worst sanctuaries. I say sanctuaries because I would call Titan Valley a prison, because the dragons are literally enslaved to the giants. They're treated like animals. Like, that's just, even animals shouldn't be treated like that. That's a different topic. It's terrible. Titan Valley, the way the now deceased giant queen treated the dragons is despicable. It's terrible. And yet we don't see Ronodin do anything about how the dragons were treated, even though we know he has a certain sway with the former, now deceased, giant queen. That whole situation. Yes, he was involved in multiple fallings of the dragon sanctuaries, but was that for the sake of the dragons, or just to spread chaos and gain power? If a character is morally gray, they have good intentions, but evil way of fulfilling them. I have yet to see Ronodin's good intentions anywhere. Let's take the Everbloom for an example. If Ronodin had been able to manipulate Seth into taking the Everbloom, the volcano Bagaloa would have been destabilized and many ecosystems would have been destroyed. Many of which I assume the small dragons that didn't leave the sanctuary while it was fallen still reside, as well as some dark beings. Ronodin didn't care about them. He only cared about what he wanted. This is why I call Ronodin a performative activist. He fits the definition, okay? Here's the definition via Google. Performative activism is a term referring to activism done to increase one's social capital rather than because of one's devotion to a cause. It is also often associated with surface level activism referred to as slackism. Ronodin got a sort of like loose allyship with Celebrant for helping with the dragons. But we know Ronodin only helped Celebrant because he had information about one of his horns. And releasing the undead from the Blackwell was only to get another one of his horns, or at least information about it from the Underking. So he doesn't really actually care about liberation, he cares about his own interest. And saying he cares helps him get what he wants. Performative activism at its finest. in a fictional setting, at least. There's a YouTube video that I highly suggest you watch because a lot of what I would have said and do say is in there. Video title is Dear Authors, Morally Gray Characters, and I have it linked below in the blog post. I think this video explains morally gray characters very well and mentions another trope I think Ronodin fits, as I mentioned before, the bad boy trope. But you can look up the definition to that if you want to, because I'm not going to focus very much on that trope. Morally gray isn't somebody who does terrible things, but has a few redeeming qualities, so you like them, and is hot, so it's fine. That's the bad boy trope, not morally gray, as I've said before. Lean into the bad, but also lean into the good. Murphy Napier on YouTube, the video linked above, well, linked above in the blog post, but linked below and here. So this is how I see morally gray characters, and I don't see Ronodin leaning towards good anything. He says he is, but like, why doesn't he stick with it then? Maybe if he was doing bad things to protect his family instead of throwing them in jail and handing them over to demon kings, but he isn't doing that. He is actively harming his family and only looking out for himself. Most morally gray characters have a strict moral code that they follow and will not break. We don't know if Ronodin has a moral code. He kind of just does whatever the heck he wants. There's no morals or reasons to string to it that we know of. I don't know, maybe if the book was from Ronodin's point of view, this would be different, but it's not, so it isn't. We only see that he's going to look out for himself above all else, even people that he's partnered with. We haven't seen him fighting towards a goal that he really wants to achieve other than causing harm and chaos. A little section where I asked people on Instagram and a few of my friends what they thought, and so from Vanessa Santaro Fan Club / Kayla, you can find her with that username on TikTok. I love her videos, check that out. Kayla said, I would say he isn't morally gray, but likes to be perceived that way. EVFGH / Fiona said, yeah, for me he doesn't seem morally gray at all. He does what he wants even if it's bad and likes causing harm and chaos for everyone. My opinion anyway. Smiley face. This is something important I forgot to mention before. More often than not, morally gray characters do not enjoy the bad things that they do, but feel they need to for the greater good. I don't see that behavior with Ronodin anywhere. Is Ronodin morally gray? What people on my Instagram said. I'm just gonna be reading directly off so I don't mess anything up on here, so I'm gonna be looking this way. Yes. He isn't on a specific side. He's only on his side for the whole conflict and helps whatever side he thinks has more chances of winning. And also he's a unicorn, so he used to be a creature of light, but became a creature of darkness. I believe it happened because he was hurt somehow and didn't want it to happen again, so he seeks out the best possible way to avoid it. No. Ronodin has no values that hold interest in the lives of others. He's plain bad. Yes, I think he's morally gray because he doesn't serve a particular side. He's only really allied with himself, and I feel he has good intentions, but he's not very subjective and only wants power. But I love him for that. But also, I think a lot of people think morally gray is like, oh, they don't pick a side, they keep switching sides. That's, as I've said, that's not morally gray, that's just bad boy or a jerk. No, I feel like some of the fandom simps over him and makes him seem better than he is. I fully agree with that. I see way too many people simp for Ronodin, and I just want to say, please, if you're able to, get therapy. Stop it. Get some help. Don't simp over damaged people. Please. It's not healthy. No. He presents himself and his morals as somewhat like the Sphinx, but in truth, the real intent would probably be to rule the Light Kingdom. He has helped the dragons, but I don't believe it was with good intent. My conclusion. So no, I don't think Ronodin's morally gray. Maybe if the books were from his POV, I would see it differently, but I don't, and they aren't. But yeah, that's the blog post. Have a magical day, fabled friends, and I hope to see you again.